Good evening and welcome to Mello TV. I'm your host, Nicole Hales. Thank you for joining us for this evening's discussion. We will be analyzing the findings of a Mello TV poll conducted by pollster and CEO of Johnson Survey Research Limited, Bill Johnson, with this evening's focus on job performance for government ministers. Also joining us in the discussion are former General Secretary of the People's National Party, Paul Burke, and political commentator, Linton Gordon. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
With the COVID-19 pandemic hitting the island, it has caused the Health and Wellness Minister, Dr. Christopher Tufton, and his team to be pushed in overdrive and eventually having to have other ministers follow suit. His performance, crime in recent months has been rising, having zones of special operation to be called for communities. Does this reflect the performance of Minister Dr. Horace Chang? Based on the numbers, Bill, what are the Jamaican people saying overall as to who is the best performing minister?
Okay, without question, it's Christopher Tufton, where 55% said that they felt that he was the best performing minister. That was followed by Nigel Clark with 9%, Ed Bartlett with 6%, and Horace Chang with 2%. So there's no question about it. People believe that Christopher Tufton, by far the best performing government minister at this time.
Linton, Dr. Tufton is way ahead of his colleagues. Does this contribute to the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic by his ministry and the government?
I have no doubt that that's where the impression of his performance is coming from. And it's a fair and accurate assessment because, as we said in earlier programs, Dr. Christopher Tufton took on the responsibility in a serious way. He showed commitment, dedication, and above all, he was calm and level-headed in the way he went about the various challenges that the ministry and indeed the government and the country faced from COVID-19.
Paul, you've indicated previously that the government's handling of COVID-19 can in part be contributed to a good communications campaign. Do you think that is what has propelled Dr. Tufton ahead of the pack of his colleagues with 55%? Is it that he has a good PR team and not necessarily his performance or having any impact in his portfolio ministry?
Well, this poll is about the public's perception of performance, but not to take anything away from Minister Tufton. He is a good communicator. He is always composed and he's a hands-on minister. Obviously, the entire COVID episode has assisted his popularity. But I want to make some comments just about how people, and this has been across political administrations, I think the public's perception is a lot about visibility, likability, personality, public relations, social media impact. If you ask many people poll, remove the COVID issue. What is one of the performance issues? What is an achievement of one of the ministers they have rated? Many will be hard pressed to identify a particular issue where they thought a minister had excelled. It is a lot about visibility and likability and PR, but Minister Tufton has done well.
But I don't think, however, that his performance and the fact that the country was and in fact is faced with a serious health issue, and he has handled it professionally and competently. I don't think you can separate that from him and try to dissect it and to assess him from another position. You assess someone the way they have performed their duties and carry out their responsibilities, and I don't think they can be separated.
Crime continues to be a critical factor. It was ranked it was ranked when we did looking at the national and local issue. It continues to be a significant issue for the Jamaican public. With Dr. Chang's 2% rating on his performance, do you think that his inability and the government's overall inability to introduce a crime plan and the continuous use of zones of special operations as a short-term measure, are the Jamaican people saying what is happening is reflective of the numbers that they've assigned to him?
My opinion is that Dr. Chang is not comfortable in that ministry. I get the impression I form of him is that he's going through the motions, but he's not comfortable. I don't think he has put in the ministry as much as is needed. It's a priority ministry, and I don't get the impression that he's out there going all out to get on top of the crime situation. I think he's catching up and is merely making comments after the fact.
Paul, anything to add?
I think he's a very hard-working minister in a challenging ministry where they have failed. But I will tell you, I have never seen a minister of national security being very popular. I've never seen a minister of national security across administrations being in the top 3, certainly not in the top 5. It is a ministry where you will not get much popularity. But of course, the murders continue to climb, and people have to blame someone, and they blame the Minister of National Security because it is him you see on the crime scenes while you hear the Prime Minister making proposals to deal crime, but people blame Minister Tufton. Not Minister Tufton, Minister Chan, sorry.
Dr. Chan.
Dr. Chan.
Linton, I want to go back to something that you said earlier. You said that he has been uncomfortable and he's not been performing well in that portfolio. Should the Prime Minister replace him, or is it too late?
Well, I don't know about late, which is suggesting that there might be election in the air. What I do know is that my impression is that he has not been enjoying himself there, and I don't think there's any harm in the Prime Minister putting someone who could bring some vision, some effort, some determination. I'm not going to call it a crime plan, because you don't have to have a national plan outlined in a structured way to deal with crime. Crime is multifaceted, and you can address one area, as has recently been announced, that there'll be a team combined of police and soldiers to get at the gang. So you can address the various issues and the various sections that are threatening our lives without having this national plan. I just think that the incumbent has not put out all he could have and ought to at the job.
Do you agree with that statement, Paul? He has not been putting out all that he can, even though it's a difficult ministry, as you indicated earlier?
I think crime in Jamaica has to be tackled short term, long term, and medium term. And obviously, the government of Jamaica and the face of the government of Jamaica is Dr. Horace Chan. Obviously, the government of Jamaica made a lot of big promises when they came into office. I have to repeat what the Prime Minister said about Jamaicans being able to sleep with their windows open and doors open. And Dr. Chan is the one who has the responsibility to ensure that Jamaicans can sleep with their windows open and doors open, and they have failed. So I believe he works hard, I believe he's sincere, but they have failed. And he has to take the responsibility for that failure.
Bill, I want to move on now to the approval ratings of the government ministers. What are the figures showing?
Basically, they're showing that the JLP isn't just a one-act circus, because by and large, 4 key government ministers receive darn good approval ratings. Christopher Tufton, 79% approve of the job he's doing, 60% approve of the job that Nigel Clark and Ed Bartlett are doing, and even 50% approve of the job that Horace Chang is doing. Now, once again, if we go behind these figures, I think they're even more meaningful. 69% of those who voted for the PNP in 2016 say that Christopher Tufton approve of the job that Christopher Tufton is doing. 50% of those who voted for the PNP approve of the job that Nigel Clark and Ed Bartlett are doing. And then it drops down to 38% of those who voted for the JLP are approving of the job that Horace Chang is doing, and 40% of the PNP voters disapprove of the job he's doing. But by and large, these are very strong numbers for 4 key government ministers.
Paul, again, the persons who voted for the PNP in 2016, they approved of the job that Nigel Clark, the Minister of Finance, and Christopher Tufton doing. They even indicated that Edmund Bartlett, our tourism minister, he's doing a great job, approval rating of 50%. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't quarrel with the people who are polled, because polls are the people who use survey, and it is supposed to be a scientific selection. I have always had issues with polls and how they reflect popular feeling. And it's something I've said when the PNP was in office, so it's not something new. Sometimes I wonder about the circle I move in and what I feel on the ground as against what is being reflected in these polls. And I really think we need a discussion to how does Bill select his 80 communities? How does he select the people? I think there needs to be a public education on the methodology, because pollsters have got it right so many times and they have got it absolutely wrong so many other times, even up to recently. And I'm talking about recognized professional pollsters who do polls and they get the information wrong. And I'm talking about 3 months before an election. I'm talking about 2 or 3 weeks before an election. So I need to understand a bit more about that survey method. And I'm not accusing Bill of any impartiality or any unprofessional behavior. But I have a problem, right, when I see some of these numbers.
Well,
Linton Pauls has a difficulty with the numbers. What do you say?
I don't have any difficulty. Sorry?
I'm sorry, were you asking me, Nicole?
Linton,
Oh.
the figures, what do you have to say about them? Are you surprised about the results?
I have no, and I have no difficulty with the results of the poll conducted by Bill. Indeed, I am surprised that the ratings for Bartlett are not higher, because he has done an exceptionally good job at the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Tourism, I'm so sorry. And I believe that this is a true reflection of his performance. Nigel Clark, new to politics, new to the Ministry of Finance, but he has committed himself, and his presentations indicate that he does his research, he does his preparation, and he's moving in a direction to modernize the finance ministry, to modernize our system of accountability and the distribution of government resources. And I think he should be commended for that. I think he's doing a good job, and the polls reflect what is happening in the various ministries.
Bill, I want to touch on a point. In terms of the polling, we're not seeing any of the female ministers coming out prominently. Based on the assessment conducted, we want to know why weren't they being featured? We are on a thrust of we want to push the 51% coalition of having more women be represented on the political arena, in the political space. Is it a matter of while they are participating, but they are not being given portfolio ministries that are seen as much more formidable within the public sphere? They're giving more softer ministries to manage. What's the public saying?
Well, that could be part of it. I mean, let's not forget the four ministers that we're talking about here have very high profile, very important positions: finance, health, national security, and tourism, of course. I mean, we could have asked about every minister in the government, but from previous surveys, it was determined that we would specifically ask the job performance of these four. In future polls, we might include some of the others. If I can get back to a point that Paul was making, and I don't want to get into a debate here, but 84 communities that were interviewed in were selected purely statistically, and our overall results, one of the questions we asked people is, did you vote in the last election, in this case, 2016? And if you did vote, whom did you vote for? Our sample tonight reflects that 50%, excuse me, overall 25% of the sample voted for the JLP, 25% of the sample voted for the PNP, and the other 50% didn't vote for one reason or another. And those figures are pretty much in accord with the actual election statistics of 2016. So it wasn't a biased sample in terms of we over-interviewed JLP voters and undersampled PNP voters. As I say, we had an equal number, the way it turned out, of JLP voters and PNP voters in our ultimate sample, which was basically, as you may recall, the way the election itself turned out in 2016.
Gentlemen?
Understanding polls. I mean, if I were being surveyed as a political figure and they asked me who I voted for last election, I would tell them the Jamaica Labour Party. And I would say, I am not voting for the JLP today. And I am asking you a very simple question. It might seem very simplistic. How much of the answers do you really believe are authentic? I'm happy to hear the poll numbers, 25, 25, 50. That is really reflective of the voter turnout last election. But is there any possibility of persons knowing of polls and deliberately trying to manipulate the information?
Okay, well, first of all, if people ask who the poll was being conducted for, in this case, it was being conducted for Mello TV by Johnson Survey Research. They didn't know, I mean, we didn't say this was a PNP poll or a JLP poll. So if somebody wanted to play with the poll results, they wouldn't know which way to play with them. They wouldn't know who was conducting the poll. Secondly, we look through each questionnaire basically to see if results are consistent in terms of, don't forget, we're asking 40 different questions. And I've been doing this long enough so that if somebody isn't being honest, it's pretty apparent it comes up. And so we're very skeptical of answers similar to the one that you were suggesting, Paul. Also, in 2012, 2016 in the United States, election, Rush Limbaugh suggested that people go out and say they're voting for Hillary Clinton when they really wouldn't be voting for Hillary Clinton in an effort to mess up the polls. Well, this was in primaries. This didn't have any effect whatsoever. And he was a pretty, widely recognized figure in a certain segment of the society. So does it happen? Do one or two people try to mess with our heads, so to speak? Maybe, but we interviewed 1,200 people, and the vast majority of them give people honest answers. Most people are happy to be interviewed. They hear about surveys. People say, gee, I've never interviewed. Well, here's their opportunity to express how they feel and to give their input into a poll that's going to be publicized. So I don't think, with all due respect, that that's much of an issue at all, Paul.
And I
Thank you
don't
very
want to
much,
get
Bill,
into that
for
debate.
gentlemen. We have to get back on track. We have to get back on track, gentlemen. Bill, thank you very much for explaining how the Mello TV poll was done. And thank you very much, gentlemen. With us this evening, we had pollster Bill Johnson, who broke down the numbers for us. We also had with us political commentator Linton Gordon and former General Secretary of the People's National Party, Paul Burke. Join us tomorrow for the Mello TV poll when we look at the performance of the opposition spokesperson. I'm Nicole Hales. Thanks for joining us.